What's going on, everyone? It's Simon, and today I'm excited because we're going to talk about the decision-making process behind my gear. Gear acquisition syndrome, also known as GAS, is a really big deal, and quite frankly, this time of year there's normally a lot of announcements of new cool tech that could be really helpful. And a lot of people talk about, oh, this camera's the best, that camera's the best, and quite frankly, every job has a specific need and specific cameras that work for it and specific tools that work for it. And one of the things I've found is, especially because of the way that I work and the places that I go, there are specific requirements that I have to think about when it comes to what gear I am going to buy. Just to kind of put it all into like the decision thought process, there's three main categories that I am thinking about: size, weight, capabilities, functionality, that kind of thing, and build quality goes in with that as well. And then cost and ROI, or return on investment. How long is it going to take me in working to pay off the purchase of this piece of gear? I personally have never taken a loan out for camera equipment. It's something that I just have chosen not to do at this point. But there may be a job where I have to get a bigger camera that I will have to take a loan out. But at this point, I haven't had that need. I also don't have the ability to take the bigger cameras. So a lot of my friends are using cameras like the Red Gemini, the Red Monstro, the Arri Alexas, and the Mini LFs and the Minis. And those are great cameras, but for what I'm doing with the V-mount batteries and the gold mount batteries, it's not practical for where I'm going to take all of that equipment with my workflow. There are people that go to the similar locations with that type of kit, but they also have a lot more people involved on their projects, where the most I'm really traveling with is 3 people, usually 2 and sometimes by myself, where having all of that stuff by myself would just slow me down and make me less efficient when I'm in the field and take away from being able to tell the story of whatever it is, whether I'm at a hospital or a school. Like, having all of that stuff just would get in the way and would not work out. Plus, there comes down to, I may not be able to charge all of that equipment because, quite frankly, a V-mount battery does not last very long on a Red camera. And there's days when I will go through just 2 of these on the FS5, and quite frankly, that 2 of these is still, I think, square inches wise smaller than one 90 watt-hour V-mount battery. And this is the BPU 60 out of the Sony FS5. So that alone, like, I would probably have to have 4 or 5 V-mount batteries or gold mount batteries to 2 or 3 of these and have a lot less space. Plus, that stuff is all a lot more expensive. So where I am able to do the job with this, it would cost me exponentially more money just to be using one of those cameras. I am not saying they are a bad camera, it's just not helpful for what I do. And also, I found myself actually going down to just taking A7 cameras on a few projects recently, and it's done the job. It's, again, capabilities, size, weight, all of that. And I wanted to talk about how I think of all of this stuff and like how I evaluate what gear I'm going to use, using 2 of the biggest decision makers that I've had in recent time. And that was when I moved from Nikon to Sony completely, and then also when I just recently picked up the Rhino Slider over some other motorized slider options. So we're gonna get into that right now. I'm gonna start with Sony because this is an easy one that everyone can relate to. And again, I'm talking specifically about travel photography and travel filmmaking, and especially remote travel and that kind of thing. So my first foray into the Sony ecospace was the FS5. And when I first bought this camera was January of 2016, and it's been a workhorse ever since, which proves to why you choose the right gear. But the reason why I bought it was because at the time I was using Nikon DSLRs and I wanted a real video camera, but all of the other cameras that were out were these big monstrous things that would be hard for me to take with me when I'm overseas. And then this came out and it was so small that it just did the job so perfectly and didn't take up a ton of bag space for how powerful it is as a camera. It was also only around $5,500 when I bought it, and I bought it with the kit lens. That was the brand new price because I bought it the month that it came out. So literally like brand new, $5,500. And the reason why I went that route was because I knew I could pay off the camera in less than a year between working domestically in upstate New York where I was, along with working overseas. And I could use it for both things. The biggest thing that I've always thought about is, will I take this with me when I'm overseas? That started to add in other Sony camera gear. And then once I picked up the A7 series and was using exclusively A7 series, that changed the game even more. The ability to have it where all of my cameras have the same basic like codec, it's not the exact same, but it's close enough that it's easier to file match or image match the cameras, and I'm able to make custom picture profiles, so it's pretty much across the board the same. Doesn't matter what camera I'm using, it's a pretty close look, so coloring in post is really simple. It makes life a lot easier, and plus, at the time, Sony was the only one making mirrorless cameras that were really powerful, that were flexible too when it comes to both photo, video, and then having like real video options. Canon at the time was having the C series, but you still had the 5Ds, which to get 4K was a lot of cropping, whereas the A7s, we didn't have to worry as much about the crop. We were able to get the full frame 4K, super awesome. And so it was just one of those things that like, the capabilities of it were fantastic. So that was what led to the jump. Now, similar thought process came when I was looking at getting the Rhino Slider. This thing is fantastic, awesome, I love it. And I'd been looking at getting a motion control slider for about a year and a half before I made this purchase. And I've looked at every company, Edelkrone, Kessler, Syrup, and then Rhino, which are like the big players in the space. There's a couple other ones, but these were like the main players. And when I looked at all of the specs and capabilities of everything, each one had pros and cons. Kessler, Rhino, and Syrup were all around the same price point, all had similar capabilities. Kessler, you can expand it a lot more as far as like build out what it can do with the motors. However, it was a lot heavier as a rig. The pan tilt head alone is like 9 pounds, and you're using extruded 80/20 steel or aluminum. So it's just generally like heavier, a lot more bulk, takes up more bag space. Then you've got the Syrup, which was great, but it's expandable and all of that, but you have to use a phone app, which was again, another device you have to have charged when you're out in the field. And there's been times when I just haven't been able to charge all of my equipment. So having something where I just have one less unit to charge is wonderful. That way, if my phone dies, it is what it is. It just sits in the bag. Then there's Edelkrone, which was just generally bigger and heavier and more expensive than the Rhino. So that's what really came down to the Rhino, was the balance. I do wish that I could expand the rails on this, and it's something that I'm hoping to work on developing, a way to attach two of these 24-inch things together. But currently the way that their system works is it's only a 24 and a 42-inch set of rails, which is not my ideal because I can't travel with a 42-inch set of rails. Even though I would love the distance, I have to stick with the 24. But this gets me good enough for the majority of what I'm trying to do. Is it allowing me to like level up just that little bit? And yeah, is it the perfect dream system that I'd ever had? Nope, because of the fact that I can't expand on it. But I'm gonna go into that in another video, so be sure you hit the subscribe button so you see that part. Thinking about all of the variables that go into what I'm doing, where I'm going, am I going to actually bring this with me is really what it comes down to. Will this go with me and make my project better, yes or no? everyone's got different needs that they have for projects. If I was working domestically only and working with different clients, it would be a different set of tools that I would need, but this is what I'm doing. And that's something that I tend to tell a lot of people. A lot of my friends ask me gear questions because I'm a gear nerd and love knowing about what's out there. And I will tell them the exact same thought process, like, what's your cost and return on investment? What is the size, weight? Is that a factor for you? And what are the capabilities versus other things on the market? What's similar? What does it do specially that you can't get elsewhere that really is the reason why you buy that specific tool? Everyone's different. Everyone's got different projects. Everyone has different ways that they work. So this is just the way I do it. If you guys have any questions about my gear buying process, what gear I'm using right now, that kind of thing, leave a comment down below. If you guys have any other questions that are more tailored, hit me up on Instagram over at Simon Eisenbach. Other than that, have a great week. I'll see you guys next time.